Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CW Live. My name's Chris Webb, Head of Communications at the CWU. You notice that Michael's not with us this week. I'm standing in for Michael, so we wish him well and we want him to return ASAP. I'm sure you all do, but for now, you've got to put up with me and let's see how we go. We've got a great session tonight. We've got Raw Mail delivery members. So much going on with the USO review, issues in workplaces, the impending and potential takeover of Raw Mail. So we know that there's going to be dozens and dozens of questions for you. Just before we get into that, though, a couple of other bits of news in what has been a really busy week for the union. First of all, for our members in BT Group, right across OpenReach, BT, Consumer, and other areas, EE, we have reached a pay settlement, which now goes out to vote. You can see it, the details of which are on your screen. We just wanted to make some very simple points because we've seen a teeny bit of confusion out there. The pay rise is £1,000 plus 1% or 1% plus £1,000. And that £1,000 is consolidated and it is pensionable. So it's not a 1% pay rise. It's actually a very, very good pay rise because you combine the two. And based on whatever your basic pay is, you come out the other end with a much higher percentage. So if you're a call center worker, then you're going to end up in a higher rate than perhaps you would if you was a telecoms engineer. But both will come out with an excellent percentage exit rate, and we felt it was worth clearing that out for you. The other thing is, there's been some questions from our OpenReach members about Project Manta and Project Green. Well, we had a podcast this week. We've emailed it out to members, but you can find it on our YouTube channel. It's gone down really, really well. I sat down with National Officer Fiona Curtis and Executive Member Anton Begley, and we had a really good detailed discussion around those projects, around the restructuring in OpenReach, and how the union has secured an excellent settlement in that area. So please, if you get a chance, check that out. Now, on to today's show, Raw Mail Deliveries. Delighted to have with me three really, really good guests. I think you're going to enjoy and really learn from what they've got to say. I've got, of course, our National Officer, Tony Bouch. Can't seem to keep him off air since we got you elected, Tony, but it's brilliant. And I really want to say thanks before we even get into it for the amount of effort you're putting in to communicate with the members. It really makes my job and our job a lot easier. So good to have you with us, Tony.
Yeah, good evening, Chris, and good evening to everyone.
And I can see, I think Tony's guarding it now, but just behind him is a nice Plymouth Argyle flag. And Tony and I can gloat a little bit tonight because we actually got our first away win of the season at Portsmouth. So that one's for you, Stuart Hardy. I've also got with us Luke Elgar from our National and Postal Executive. Luke's been out and about, and we thought it'd be brilliant, like as Tony's been out and about, but Luke's been out and about on the ground, speaking to members, so getting his view on how things are going on the USO. So good to have you with us, Luke.
Yeah, good evening, Chris. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, mate. And we've probably more importantly than both of those two, joined by Colin Kerwick, who's our area delivery rep. I believe Colin for the MK and LU postcode.
That's correct.
Areas,
that's
mate.
Correct.
Colin is at the coalface. He's like you. He's on delivery. He's facing the hassle. He's in offices every single day of the week. So, Colin, really, really looking forward to hearing your view a little bit later in the show because you were in Brinklow delivery office in Milton Keynes today talking to the members alongside Luke. So, thanks for joining us, mate, and thanks for taking the time to be with us.
You're welcome.
Good to have you with us. So, Tony, if I can come to you first, if that's all right, mate. Obviously, you've been out and about. I know you've been in Nottingham this week. I know you were travelling in the middle of the night to an AGM up in Scotland at the weekend. I thought it was worth you giving the members a sort of state of the nation. Where are we on the USO? Have we got any initial feedback from the trials that have started? Any issues you've had with Raw Mail? What we're getting fed back from members across the country? And any other points you want to make?
Yeah, so thanks, Chris, and thanks for setting up the session because I do think it's important that we do a touch point given where we are with the company. So, I think Martin, the DGSP, is back on Monday from annual leave, and we're going to set out, I think, some communications around discussions that we're having with the employer and obviously the EP group takeover. So I think it was communicated this week that we've already announced there'll be a special briefing on the 21st of May. And on a policy forum on the 22nd of May, which will pick up some of those developments. So that's the first thing. Where are we with the pilot? So the only office that's gone live so far is Newton Mearns up in Scotland. They're into their third week now of doing the USO pilot, i.e. the optimized delivery model. So that is live. We're learning the lessons around that. I think it's fair to say it is a good start point because the fact it's only a small delivery office with 20 walks in, it's enabling the businesses' concept and design to be tested in a live environment, but actually in an environment we can control. So I'll touch on some of those parts in a minute, Chris, when we come back on that. But so that office is live. The key part that's come out of it is the upstream element. So where the mail centres through automation would extrapolate some of the mail that was not classed as first class or parcels. There's been some teething issues, and I think that's absolutely fine to say that is the best way to describe it. And the business are absolutely in the place where they're going to get that right. They're not going to turn on some of the other delivery offices that were planned to go live in mid-March until they've got that correct and they put all those adjustments that need to be made to the algorithm and to the machinery within mail centres, because otherwise delivery will just fall over in those offices. So that's being worked on. There's some tech upgrades will get put into the automation systems over the next week, and then obviously the plan is to go live in Cumbernauld and Ayr and Girvan before the end of the month. And then obviously the next two offices are the two in Northern Ireland, so Ballymena and Antrim. Now all 6 of those have agreed their attendance patterns that they're going to use through the pilots, and likewise they've agreed their indoor layout. So I think that's positive. That's been local reps, the members in those workplaces engaged in that process, and we'll learn the lessons through that. So really, there's a lot going on, Chris. We've had a couple of meetings today with Royal Mail, which I want to cover on in a minute. And obviously, we've agreed a process with the postal executive about how we communicate. And obviously, we're going to run that through yourself as well. And I know we've got another session we're going to do on the 27th of this month.
Thanks, Tony. Really good initial scene setter from you. So one of the things I think I want to come back on straight away, if I can, is I think we see on our pages and emails and all the channels of communication that are coming in from members a real concern. I was actually just reading some comments before we went live on air around the fact that Royal Mail, even if it's not working in the initial trial offices, they'll just plough on. But you seem to be saying there that they have indicated and are demonstrating that like they're taking this cautiously. I think that's going to reassure members. Is that right? Is that the case?
Yeah, that is the case, Chris. So look, Newton Mearns is the only delivery office that is actually live under the 37 pilot offices. So again, there's been some mail that the business would have expected to be held upstream in the mail centres through either a CSS machine, through some of the TOPS 2000 machines, etc., etc. So until they get that right, they're not going to turn on the other 3 offices in Scotland and the 2 in Northern Ireland. So I think that demonstrates that they're not going to try and make this work by default. They're going to learn the lessons before they push the button on that. The second part of it is in Newton Mearns, obviously the office was on a 1 in 6 attendance pattern. They've moved to a 2 in 5 attendance pattern, so 2 Saturdays off in 5. And obviously they agreed that they would do a repick. And in the main, most of the employees in the office have picked a core walk, so shared van duties, etc., and stayed on those, or they picked a combined duty. And one of the things that we've learned already through the pilots is that the mix of traffic is slightly different between those 2 routes. So where you're delivering first class and parcels, the business have been clear that there's probably a bit of time that's being made rather than against the plan on a Monday and Tuesday. But actually, the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is becoming a bit of a challenge. So again, that's positive. And likewise, the core walks who get obviously 6 days worth of second class and non-priority items condensed into Monday and Friday. The Monday and Tuesday, whilst we move to a standard attendance pattern across the days, that's been quite challenging because particularly with door to door. But it's been easier to manage on the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in the office. So we're reviewing the attendance patterns, reviewing the model. Is it that we have to tweak some of the 4 to F, so where they planned the combined duties covering 2 to 1 routes? Does that have to be tweaked on certain days of the week? But again, I think what that does do, Chris, is it tries to reassure people that everything we're learning, the business are trying to work with the CWU both locally, within the areas and in the divisions, as well as us nationally, to find the right solutions before tipping it into other offices just to say it works.
I think, off the back of what we've seen as such a destructive period where, Royal Mail abandoned all concept of quality of service and decent treatment, people will be really sort of pleased to hear that. I want to stick with the USO. and then I know you want to talk about some other things in that, but you did say there in your opening contribution, Tony, that you'd had a couple of meetings with Royal Mail this week. Do you want to elaborate on those?
Yeah, so we've done one this morning, Chris, where we have a weekly session with Royal Mail on the USO. So that was around an update in Newton Mearns. It was around some of the where we put some attendance patterns, the 1 in 7 attendance patterns that we put forward as part of a joint addendum. There's some tweaks that need to be made from that based on some local nuances, which again I think we were alive to. Obviously, we've dealt with again I think this is about trying to reassure people. So. The business had a previous strategy around delivery 2.1. We've jointly landed on a communication today that will be the indoor layout designs is about space and is about the vertical prep versus horizontal, which people will understand, I think, when we start to explain that in more detail. But it's not about increasing double slots, and that communication absolutely makes that clear. So that's absolutely positive. That'll be welcomed, and in all aspects that will have to be agreed locally. Through the local reps with the engagement of the members in those workplaces. Second one is, again, we're starting to produce a daily feedback sheet, a daily feedback reporting process, not just from Newton Mearns, but for every office going forward. So again, that's important. And then we've started to work on what new equipment is available to support delivery members going forwards with regards to any of the changes. So, is there better pouches? Is there better HCTs? Is there better trays that can be used in terms of delivery? And we're alive to that. Likewise, I know that this has been raised in previous shows, and we've communicated around potentially rotating between a core walk and a combined duty. But the business have agreed now that we're going to do a session next week that we jointly start to record and formulate how we measure fatigue and how we measure this impact on individuals, because we need to make sure the job is doable, manageable and fair going forwards. And I think the last one really, Chris, is the posted executive has agreed that we, even notwithstanding where we are with the company, we are going to start to do a CWU communication on the lessons learned, because this is broader than just the 37 pilot offices. And that will turn into how do we communicate a brief to our reps, so our reps are up to date, and then how do we then cascade that to our members so our members can pick that up, and obviously we want to get out there to every single delivery office. So again, I'm sure we'll touch on that in a couple of weeks' time when we do another session in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Tony. And a good normal numbers on this session, as there always is for our delivery members, but you can make it better. Please share the link, get it in your office WhatsApp groups, make sure we have as many of you online as possible, because Tony, Luke and Colin have some really important things to get across. One of the comments I've just seen, Tony, was from a member, and I guess it just again gives you the opportunity to set out where the union's coming from. He was saying, in response to your sort of update on Newton Mearns, that we're not going to learn anything from an office with only 20 walks in, but I guess it's you have been proactive as a union as a whole in making sure that in that 37 trial offices there's a real mix of size and type of units, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we have, Chris. So look, listen, when we get into air of delivery office that's due to go live at the end of this month, that trebles in size for the office. I've been in Nottingham North and this week, which is a pilot office, which again has got something like 94 walks. We've also got Southend that's in the back end of the plan, Coventry North, where we've got 150 walks in place. So we've got some really large numbers, but the business started off with a small office to start with, purely because this office is one that we have to get the design and the concept right in before we, none of us would want. I think some of the members who will be in the comments now will be saying around, well, quality of service is around 70%. We're failing now. Imagine if we tipped this design into some of those offices and that made it even worse. We wouldn't want that to happen. So again, that's why we're trying to do it in that office first. There's a lot of expertise up there from Royal Mail. I'm being honest there. They've got some of their leads that are based in that area and that can deal with that automation challenges. But again, I think out of the 37 pilot offices, the CWU has picked 35 and Royal Mail have picked 2. So hopefully that gives our members that are asking us questions or making those comments the reassurances that we've got a mix of everything. We've got units that are fully HCTs, we've got units that are rurals, we've got urbans, we've got shared vans, and every part of the UK will have pilot offices within it.
You just touched on the point about rurals. Actually, leads me seamlessly into a question from a really interestingly named account, Rides, Hikes and Rambles, who says, on the trials, how do they define the difference between a town round and a rural round?
Yeah, so we're alive to this, Chris. So again, over the years, I think there used to be a classification for all delivery routes, but everyone knows over the years that there's been new builds going up. There's been delivery point growth. We've had revisions that have gone in place that have built some areas where would be classed as rural, with some delivery point growth, and added onto it, and then it's not classed as rural. So we're trying to align on that. Every office will do a data verification with the local rep, with the com, to get their classifications right, on whether a walk is classed as an urban, whether it's classed as a rural, whether it's classed as a HGT, whether it's classed as a firm duty, because we want to get that right in terms of, the business have put a business plan based on the fact that they had a classification of routes. So nationally, there's circa 56,000 routes in place now. They've classified those routes and they've built a business plan and a modelling assumption against what that produces. If we come along and say, well, actually, there's 62,000 routes across the UK, there's 6,000 missing off your list, which we know is an issue, that's going to change their assumptions. Likewise, if there's more rules than they have in the system, that's going to change their assumptions, and all of that's live. So every single delivery office in the country will go through a data verification process, which will get signed off by the local reps and the comms for those offices.
There was a comment for Tony from Mark Boyd, CW member, who, interestingly, I thought was a really good point, has asked if we are taking any customer feedback on the trials. Obviously, via Ofcom, people will be responding and can respond. But is that part of your thinking?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, Chris. So we're obviously, through your help, we're doing, I think, the first delivery survey that we've ever done in the CWU particularly since I was on the executive, since 2011. So we've done that, and that's live, and that runs out next week. So we're trying to take our members' feedback. Obviously, Ofcom's consultation ends on the 10th of April, but obviously we've been approached by a number of MPs for the CWU's view on the USO reform and the optimized delivery model concept. So we've shared that with them. We've obviously been contacted by a number of stakeholders that are going to put submissions into to Ofcom as well. So yes, that's the case. And obviously, if we need to do any wider surveys, then we'll consider that when we pick up the lessons from next week when we finish this one, because the survey that you've helped for us to do for the outdoor department, we've done it in-house, and we want to try and review that and then learn the lessons for the next one we do, and potentially whether or not we could do that externally as well.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate that. Just one more question on the USO, because I don't want to bring in Luke and I want to bring in Colin, and then I want to come back to you at the end, with a wider discussion, because people are asking questions around sick pay, VR terms, pay, and I think I want you to pick them up, clean at the end, if you like. A member has asked a question, and he said it flippantly, but he said, in the new world, will we still be able to still be forced to prioritise track and packets to help managers get their bonuses? And I guess the reason I asked that question is not to do it flippantly, it's to sort of, I guess, show that members haven't got a lot of confidence in Royal Mail changing their behaviours. We've got these 37 trial units, but that means if we've got probably 1,200 units, not in the trials at this point, or not in a new way of working, and lots of those members are not seeing and feeling change. So how are we going to rebuild that confidence? Because it's quite a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right, Chris. It is the biggest challenge we've got, isn't it? Because I think every one of our members in delivery does not like the fact that every day they're in their office, they're seeing mail fail, letters fail. We know that USO performance is around about the 73 to 76%. The target is 93.5%. The company has made a decision that it cannot deliver 93.5% next day on first class, because of the cost. I don't know what they're due to announce their financial results in May this year. There's a view on what that loss could be. And obviously, I'm not entitled to announce that. But what we do know, whatever loss they announce or a profit, is going to be minimal. But that's on the basis of delivering quality of 73% nationally. Now, the target of 93%, we know that potentially would have meant this year's financial results are completely understated because that could have cost the company another 250 million to deliver that service. So there's the first point. I think the real part though is, and again, this is a trust issue. We have to, if this is agreed by Ofcom, and if the union secures a national agreement that deals with Section 5 of the EP takeover, and we resolve pay, and we resolve sick, and we resolve VR, we resolve the new entrance T's and C's, everything that we've touched on jointly and the unions communicated on, this will be a complete reset within delivery. And if we get that agreement, every single office would be in a place where all of the walks, whether it's core, whether it's combined, will have to go out every single day. There won't be a plan to do that. So if an office has got 50 duties in its office, then there's going to have to be 50 bums on a seat to deliver those walks. And that's the key bit. Now, Royal Mail have absolutely signed up to that with the CWU. They know that the model going forwards will have to have a template in place and a workforce in place that delivers every piece of mail that's meant to be delivered on any given day. And the moment that first cog of resource and the recruitment breaks, then it falls into disrepair. Whereas now people can't see past the way the chaos is in their office. So it's a difficult one because you're almost asking people to trust the union, trust the fact that we're going to get the right agreement, trust the fact that there's going to be a reset button in delivery, trust the fact that whoever owns the company wants to adhere to that and wants to administer that new change of way of working. And obviously, the test will be when we get to that point, Chris.
Just one more before we move to Luke. We've got a couple of members here. One who is saying, sorry I missed your name, by the way, the YouTube comments are flashing so quickly, so apologies to our member here, who is saying that, it feels like the town walks and their traditional will be taking the brunt of the change over the rural ones potentially. And then I guess another comment was, I'm trying to merge these two together so you can answer both at the same time, would be there's quite a few people asking at the end of this, will there be full repicks in every office? Because, the circumstances of which people originally picked their duties are very different to the world that could be in the future.
Yeah, so just picking up on the towns in the rural. So look, rurals at the moment in terms of the plan would deliver all products Monday to Friday, and on a Saturday those routes would just deliver first class and parcels, the same as towns and urbans. Town and urbans would rotate in terms of if someone was doing a van share between walk 1 and walk 2, in week 1 they would do that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays they would do walk 3 and 4, and then they'd rotate that into week 2, which is the alternative day. Now, in essence, you're against those walks, the town walks, you're condensing 6 days of letter delivery with all products into 5. So it does increase the workload, but that's why the attendance patterns that are on the table helps to facilitate that. The bit that we've got to pick up, Chris, which is then linking into the repick question is, how do we manage fatigue and how do we manage the very manageable workloads? How do we deal with, to make sure this is sustainable in the long term for our members? And a number of things that will flow through that. So some offices have done a repick now. Some will not do a repick in the pilot activity because the pilots will change as we go through it. And there will have to be some adaptations to some of the routes because no delivery office is not the same across the UK. And even within delivery offices, there are walks that get a different amount of traffic, different call rate, different workload, and we have to manage that through the process. We get to the end of it, there will be repicks in every office, and that will be done. Now, what we are seeing in Newton Mearns as an example is people have picked to stay on core walks, but now in hindsight, they wish they'd have picked to do a rotation between a walking duty and a driving duty to manage that fatigue, and that's where we've got to try and land on. We've got to use the pilots to inform the debates and learn all of the lessons to ensure that if we get the Section 5 agreement, if Ofcom at the end of the consultation agree the change, that when we land on that national agreement, we have all of the sort of aspects ironed out and we get it right so that our members can pick the jobs going forwards and it will be done for a repick.
Thanks, Tony, and thank you for that initial contribution. Obviously, as I said, we want to bring you back in to talk to both Luke and Colin shortly, but I've got also some wider questions for you as well. I want to come to Luke now, I think, if I've got you, Luke, if you're on. with us in sunny Southend, or hopefully it's sunny down for you. Luke, I wanted to, you've been out and about. Obviously, you know, social media plays a huge part in how we communicate and how we engage with our members in the modern world, but nothing beats getting out face to face. You're an executive member. You've been really proactive, as many of your colleagues on the executive and divisional reps and branches on really getting out and about meeting members. You've been in Milton Keynes today, I understand. Talk to us a little bit about this. First of all, I want to ask you, what's the feeling on the ground, and a really honest reflection from you.
Thanks, Chris. So I was in Ramsgate, down to Margate last week, and then Brinklow today, and I believe Hemel Hempstead on Sunday. So we're really trying to get out and about and get the message across. And I think I'll get onto the narrative, but firstly, the sort of question that you asked, what are members sort of saying? So I think there's generally some positivity, obviously clear positivity around the EP agreement that we're trying to put into context. Some honest sort of understanding around the USO change, but equally, I think there's also a little bit of that. Members, we like what you're saying, sort of union man. I like what we're hearing, but we'll believe it when we see it. And that's obviously that's legacy of dealing with Simon Thompson for a number of years, who would make an agreement on paper, never stick to it. That's part of not knowing anything about EP Group and what their intentions are, and understandably so. And that's partly because their walks for a number of people haven't been, the quality of service hasn't been taken as seriously by the company. So why is that going to change now? Look, I think the narrative is one that it has to change if the company's going to have to be successful. I think Ofcom as well are clear that they're not going to tolerate a USO change that doesn't deliver quality service, and will be obviously massively tagged to that line and drumming that line for our support in terms of any change. And I think that's generally the message. Look, we're jointly trialling this USO activity, but it's not without our own demands, and that covers a reset of culture. That covers obviously what the EP Group talks on pay, on new entrants, terms and conditions, sick pay, and all the stuff that covers, and crucially on quality of service. So it's linking all that to the trials that were taking place, and making sure people are aligned, and then sort of saying, look, if with these trials being successful, which I think we hope they are in truth, then it ain't something to be scared of. There can be some positivity delivered from it, and I think that's exactly the right, that's the approach we've taken. We try to tag along enough things that we believe, try to address every single issue in fact with the EP agreement and with the terms of the reference for the trials. And that is, that would be a positive story for people in the industry if they, if these trials are a success and we move forward with that method.
I think, you sat out there, and I think, we're picking up that people looking at the EP agreement and thinking, let's be honest about it, there's going to be some nervousness as well, understandably, about, the Royal Mail being bought up by a foreign equity investment firm. So that's out there, and that that's real as well. And we're seeing some of that, in Tony's delivery survey that he's produced. And then we've got the situation where, what you say is, and Tony says, which is spot on, is, we have used that as a chance to rectify some of the ills and some of the destructive behaviours that Royal Mail embarked on in that dispute in 2022. And then the members are coming back the other way and saying, we're not feeling change in our workplace locally. How do we close that gap, Luke? So if I'm a postie watching this, I'm listening to you guys and going, you said it, like, I'll believe it when I see it, when I feel it. When are people going to see it? When are they going to feel it?
Well, crucially, it's now done. We need to, I think, to our reps, and a number of them are doing that, we need to be putting proposals on the table now in terms of particularly delivery rounds that aren't achieving at the moment. We need to be putting proposals into what fixes them in the units, because whether USO change happens or not, they're not working at the moment, and now is the time to really start going on the offensive on that. Royal Mail said they've got a number of hours set aside to fixing USO, fixing quality of service. I think it's a challenge to us, I guess, in terms of making sure that's landing in the right places, and then crucially, is that enough of what they set aside enough? And that's, that's only going to come out from those proposals on the ground in the localities, working our way up, challenged at divisional level, and then at national level if it comes to that. So yeah, I guess we don't have to link the quality of service debate to the USO change, and nor should we. It's a live issue and one that needs addressing whatever happens going forward.
One of the things I think always makes the union strong is when we get out in front of the members up. And I think whether that's building support for a ballot, a strike action, an agreement, or a campaign, a position, a policy, whatever, when we get out in front of our members and we have the debates and you have that honest interaction with members and you listen and you understand where they're coming from and they listen and understand where the National Union is coming from, that's when we're at our strongest. Tony's been doing that. To his credit, since his election, you've been doing that. Other div reps and post executive members are doing that. How important is it that we ensure that is happening in every office? Like no one left out, no-go areas where we've got no local reps, so we have to get the area reps in there or the branch in there. What would your message to colleagues across the country be on having the importance of having those meetings face to face?
Well, firstly of all, I think the ones my experience in recent months have been really positive meetings. Addressing some of the myths and all that out there that which just aren't being addressed, and giving some assurance around that, which is obviously crucial. Also, I think it's been really good to see a number of new entrants who have probably they weren't here during the dispute when we had numerous gate meetings in the build-up, and have never had that sort of workplace floor meeting before, and have been part of that. And it's been a really, I've seen some really positive and heard some really positive feedback from that. So, we sort of assume all our members have experienced that solidarity on the floor, and how we operate as a CW. I think it's very unique, and as I say, it's absolutely crucial that we don't lose that sort of unique connection we have with the floor and the ability to hold gate meetings. So I know that numerous other unions just don't have the ability because of the way they function. And equally that, given the timeline and everything that's happening with the EP agreement, with the USO change, since the dispute, I'd argue that there's never been a more important time that we're getting out on the floor and engaging people face to face.
Now, thanks, Luke. Spot on. So many of our branches are out there doing that work, and a huge credit to them. Individual local reps, area reps, divisional reps, branch secretaries, and officials from across the country. There are members who will come on and say, either legitimately haven't got a local rep, and they're struggling for information face to face. That's why they're coming onto, YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or wherever it may to vent their sort of frustrations, if you like. And then at the same time, you'll be getting, in odd areas where the branch perhaps hasn't done the meetings or the reps haven't done the meetings. A view from you really on a message to branches on the importance of doing that, but also to our members on, should they be stepping up to be the local reps or forming workplace committees? And even if they haven't got confidence to do that, how do they get a meeting at their office if they're not having one?
So on the last point first, I think Tony Bouch was over in Alton Southgate recently, an office that didn't have a rep, as I believe it, and I may be corrected wrong, but since him being in that office, now we've had, I think, 3 positions filled for that unit. So obviously that's really positive news and really positive feedback, and absolutely crucial to getting that unit represented in the best possible way. As I said earlier, the meetings have been extremely positive. Of course, after the dispute, we had some, really challenging gate meetings. That's the reality of it. I was amongst those and I experienced those. I think people are, they're starting to be more approach it in the right way. If they've got a challenging question, they'll put it across, but it's not in a, it's not in a hostile manner, as you see on social media sometimes, I'll say. And then the last point, I think that I don't know an executive member that would turn down the opportunity or the offer or invite to come and address members in the unit. So also reach out if you're having a lot of challenges like on the ground, or if you're a new rep and you think, I don't know if I'm quite confident enough to hold a massive floor meeting yet, then reach out to divisions, area reps, and all of them to make sure that, because there will be people that will bend over backwards to come and engage with the membership in that way.
Thank you, Luke. If I could keep you on the line, I know you're busy as well, like Tony is. I want to bring in Colin now. Colin Kerwick is our area delivery rep for the MK and LU postal code areas. Because I think it's important for the members, and I hope the members, agree with this, that, brilliant hearing from Tony and Luke. They're out and about and they're doing some fantastic work. But sometimes you do ask, where's the view from the front line? Well, Colin, he has a trial office in Brinklow in his postal code area. He's out and about speaking to members every day. So, Colin, brilliant to have you with us, mate. Really do appreciate you giving up the time to come on live with us to speak to the members. I guess the first point of call, you had a meeting this morning with Luke in Brinklow. It's one of the trial offices. What is the feeling on the ground in that individual office?
Hi, Chris. Right, so basically we've given assurance that we're going to obviously keep Brinklow up to date with what's going on. The divisional rep has been in there regularly. Luke was in there today, giving them a brief outline on what's going on, which is really important, that people obviously need to be kept informed of what's going on. People are apprehensive about change, which is only natural. We all don't like change, right? But change has to happen, and we know that. We've got a great agreement with this. We've got some great parameters that need to be met for the Ofcom, such as the Saturdays, the manageable workload. There's positive stuff in this. And we've just got to make sure that we do it right. And hopefully at the end of it, we will come out as a company, because the company, we don't like to say it, needs to be successful for us to reap the rewards. And hopefully this will pass somewhere towards that.
Appreciate it, Colin. Thanks, mate. Obviously, so let's just take Brinklow or any office in your area. You're going to have a mixture. Luke outlined it when he talked about, how many new entrants would come into the floor or the gate meetings and they hadn't experienced that before. You're going to have a mixture of people who are probably scarred by the dispute. Some of those people would have been suspended, dismissed, and things like that in your branch. You're going to have people who probably just want to keep their head down. You're going to have new entrants who are probably not happy that they're on lesser pay terms and conditions. You've got a real mix there of people. How important is it that, is face-to-face communication for you in bringing people together? Because, that sort of scenario would almost be a dream one for management, where people were divided, people were at each other, people had their own sort of vested interests. But we need to bring people together, don't we?
We're in a communication union, aren't we? So, we've got to communicate with our members. Our members are entitled to know what's going on. They want to know what's going on, and it's our job to inform them. So it's really important that we get out there and we talk to them, we answer their questions. It's all part of the role of being a rep, addressing people's concerns and trying to, to make them feel better about what the change is. So it's majorly important.
You talked then, Colin, about which I was really, really interested in, about the EP agreement. You were talking about just before we went live, and you mentioned it in your first contribution there. Because often I find, one of the challenges we have in getting big messages across to our members is they are so under pressure day to day. They're coming into 2 or 3 days work sometimes. They're having sort of pressure to complete their deliveries. They've been told to continue to prioritise tracked and parcels and stuff. That to get them to think of the wider picture, like ownership, all the issues that will bring, is difficult. But I wondered, because you obviously gave quite a positive outline there. I wonder how you feel in your area the EP agreement has gone down, and does that give us the platform to, as the agreement says, I guess, rebuild Royal Mail?
I think it does. I don't think we have much more of a choice. I think EP Group taking over. I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't want a foreign company taking it, but then again, what difference is that going to make? We were privatised over 10 years ago. So, we are now moving forward with the EP Group taking over. So I don't see a problem with it. And at the end of the day, it's all about the company being successful for our members to reap the rewards of a successful company. We can't get increased pay terms and conditions if the company isn't successful.
Now, you've got Tony. I mean, you've had Luke in your office this morning, doing a great job. Tony, I know, has been in your area lots as well, and he's been all over the UK. You've got them on the line now. We want to open this up way now so the 4 of us can have a bit of a back and forth together. You've got Tony here particularly. Is there anything you feel that you want from the union locally that's going to help you as an area delivery rep, will help your local reps, and will help your local members that we could be doing more?
I think we've got a lot of engagement. I think that we've been holding weekly meetings regarding the USO change in Brinklow. The company is on board with us. It's all just about information. There's probably a training issue that could happen, that we could get local reps all trained up, area reps trained up on the USO, and we're all on board with what's happening. It's maybe just a broader issue that we need to do some training, because I think training is the key.
Tony?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think, look, for me, I think you know full well my position on this. We've got to get that belief back into the workplace. We've got to support our reps. We've got to give our reps some training, and we've got to work through that process. I think we've already got we had a new delivery revision training package in place, but we're going to have to, what do we need in place for whatever comes out of USO reform? Is it weekly resource meetings? We're doing some huge work on weekly resource meetings to support our reps now, and putting the structures in place so that will benefit our members. Whatever tools the revisions pick up going forwards and USO has to change, we're going to have to train our reps, and we will have that package. We will put that in place. We will work with yourself in terms of the communications and how we can make it better, and likewise we'll use the other departments and headquarters, because listen, the only way we will be successful as a union going forwards is if we fill the gaps where we don't have reps, if we inspire people to step up and be the voice of the CWU in their workplaces, and ensure that all 1,250 workplaces increase their membership density. People know the value of being in the CWU, and they can see it for themselves in their workplaces. I think that will be the end result, Chris. That's where we want to get to. We want to fill the vacuums, fill the voids. We want every P member, every divisional rep, every branch, every ADR supporting their workplaces to ensure that people understand that whatever agreement comes out with EP, that they can understand that for their own offices and understand what they'll be voting on in the future.
Thanks, Tony. I want to come back to Colin on the point of local reps. Twice, but the first point I want to put you, Colin, is wondering what the sort of take up of local reps is in the area, and do you have any gaps? And if you do have gaps, obviously we've had issues with people whose confidence post dispute. We have people who may or may not have been happy with the settlement of a last dispute. People who had enough of the hassle and the threat to their job, etc. What more can we do to ensure there's a local rep in every office, Colin?
It's very difficult. I mean, I think in my branch, I think at the moment we've only got one office that hasn't got a rep in it. So we're going to actively kind of get into that particular office and try and recruit someone. I mean, because we've got to bring people forward. This is what it's all about. We've got to keep continuously bringing people forward into the union. We are a very strong union. And to touch on the point about people may have been a little bit upset about the agreement and about the way that we had to go, but I think people's opinions have changed. I think that they can see that we've got a good grip on this USO, and I think their opinions are definitely starting to change if they had any doubts. But we do need to make sure that we've got people coming through. It's vital for the union that we've got new people coming through all the time, but it's difficult. A lot of people are still in the mindset of they just want to come into work and do their job, which is fine, but we need to encourage people who are maybe a little bit more vocal.
Hi, Colin. Brilliant. I noticed that we never really normally do this, but I want to give someone the opportunity. There's a poster called Valley Sweeney, who is not too taken by the answers of the panel tonight. Valley, we're a very open union. My email is cweb with 2 B's at cwu.org. If you drop me an email, we'll bring you on to the show right now, and you can make all of your points to Tony, to Luke and Colin, and we'll have a debate, because we got absolutely nothing to hide. So I'm not sure if that's your real name, but if you drop me an email, cweb at cwu.org, we'll get you on in the last 5 minutes, and you can have the floor with Tony and Luke. Tony, what your pick up there on the local rep issue, and the answer, which I think Colin would give a really, really brilliant answer there.
Yeah, so look, I think there's a couple of things for me, Chris. So first of all, I do want to pay some tribute to Colin, because Colin was one of the people that was impacted and targeted through the dispute, and the Faulkner review got Colin his job back and reinstated in the workplace. But what that should do is it should show to our members and to other people that could step into a vacancy in an office, that the CWU will be there to support you. And you can see, I think, that from Colin's attitude on this call, that he knows that he's got the support from everybody within the CWU, both in his local area, in his local branch, in the division, with Luke as obviously the PEC member tagged to Anglia, and then obviously from headquarters nationally. And I think that should inspire people to start to step up within the workplaces where we don't have any reps. And we really do need to do that going forwards, from my perspective.
Thank you, Tony. So, I mean, I want to give Luke and Colin the chance to give any final messages they have this evening. I've got a couple of questions for you afterwards, Tony, if that's all right. So I want to start with you, Luke, if you've got any final messages you want to get across to the members.
Yeah, well, firstly, look, I did want to quickly touch on the recruitment of reps situation. Look, it's going to be absolutely crucial going forward that we see more and more people, particularly those who've been vocal in the comments and have a lot to say on the union. That you're the sort of people that make great union reps because you're vocal and you stand by your principles and stand by your colleagues. So look, that's a key one. I think area delivery reps have a crucial role in terms of how they support those units. Where they're supporting units that don't have a rep, you're certainly, you're seeing more people come through, and that's crucial to it. And then, crucially, I think I'm aware of at least one new person on new terms and conditions since the dispute who's become a union rep. And the more we see of that, it would be absolutely superb. Obviously, our priority is about making sure that those all terms and conditions are harmonised. So yeah, just wanted to touch on that point. And the last one, look, in terms of the USO, I said it in my, in speaking earlier. I think we need to make sure that this can be a positive news story, whilst change is daunting in a lot of respects. I believe strongly, and a number of our reps, are also saying this out in the field, and a number of our members are understanding it. Once we, tie this with change, with fixing issues around achievability, about fixing fatigue on delivery and so on and so forth, and addressing pay and all the other issues outside of the dispute. I think we can really use this to as a big reset and a pivotal moment for the CWU and CWU members and Royal Mail as a whole going forward. I think it's an opportunity that we really can't miss now.
Thank you, Luke, and thanks for your time coming on tonight, mate. We really do appreciate it. Colin, any final messages you want to get across to the members?
It's one just about the USO reform, really. It's at the end of the day, whether you're a pilot or whether you're just an ordinary office, there are the USO reform champions going around to every office, gathering information on every office. It's vital that every rep and every office gets in there and talks about their DDS. They talk about their duty structures, and if they're failing, it's important that they try and get duties back in, because under the USO reform, right, duties that are failing now, there's a good chance they won't work at when the USO comes in. So it's vitally important that we are engaging constantly.
Thank you, Colin. We really do. I mean, obviously appreciate Tony and Luke's time, but I really do appreciate your time as well coming on, and you're doing a great job, mate. So thanks for everything you're doing, and we'll see you and Luke soon. Tony, I wanted to come back on some wider stuff if I can, just for 5 minutes or so. We've got, obviously, the EP agreement is in place, and a lot of the conditions of that are based on, post-transaction, if you like, so when the deal is completed. But we have members, obviously tonight framed as a USO show, but naturally people are coming on and they're asking about things like pay, sick pay, voluntary redundancy terms. Are really, really important issues. I wonder if you've got any update on how the union is handling that agenda, particularly in what is quite a complex situation, isn't it, with the owners not yet quite being in place?
Yeah, that's correct, Chris. So obviously, as I said earlier on at the start of the show, and for people that have missed it, we're working on a timeline and a chain of events. So we've actually announced, as I say, a special briefing of our branches on the 21st of May, and then there'll be a policy forum on the 22nd. And it's been done that way at this moment in time because of the fluidity around the takeover. So Romania is the last EU country to agree to the takeover. And obviously EP are trying to go through that process. And once that's concluded, the offer will open up for 28 days for people to formally accept it. At the end of that 28-day period, wherever that gets to, if they get more than 75% of the shares being sold to them, then it will come off the stock market. So then EP Group will be the majority owners of IDS at that point. Now, your point was that the EP agreement from December made it clear that from the date of transaction being completed, a number of the elements, so pay 2025, we're trying to resolve the issue around sick pay, trying to deal with the VR terms, and the new entrants, trying to get them harmonised up on their terms and conditions. They would all be captured either within 3 months of the takeover or 6 months. Now, obviously, we'd have hoped that the takeover would have been completed now, and we would be in that period. But Royal Mail and the CWU have agreed to start some intense talks between both parties' negotiating teams, starting on the 31st of March. That's been booked in, and we're going to go into 2 weeks of intense talk to try and get all of the elements of pay, VR, sick pay, the new T's and C's, and harmonisation. How do we land the overarching agreement, reset industrial relations, reset employee relations, because I think that's the key test for all of us going forwards. That's what EP have signed up to do. That's the pledge that they've given to the CWU, and those talks will become pivotal to that.
Thanks, Tony. Grumpy in the comments, and he is being pretty grumpy, actually. By the way, the comments move at such a pace, it is difficult, and we do try and get such, we don't hide anything. I've just invited a member who is, constantly attacking the union onto the show. When the union has nothing to hide, the most transparent union in the country, no other union would dream of doing this type of Q&A, but we're not dodging any questions, Grumpy. We just sometimes don't see it. And now I have seen it, so I promise you we will ask it, which is, there's a question he has around what's happening with the uplift of contracts from 35 to 37 hours, Tony. I'm not sure exactly what that's in connection with. So, Grumpy, if you want to give a little bit more detail, but Tony, you may know what he means.
Yeah, I can do, Chris. So, look, I think this is where there is a complex matter. So, there's two things. So, as part of the enablers for the USO terms of reference and the pilots, there was agreed that part-time to full-time, so there was circa 11,000 people doing a variation of contracts that hadn't been uplifted. So that's taken place. I think we're at about 98.7 of that's been completed now. So that's a huge success that the union have got all those individuals on the right contracts. The complexity that Grumpy, obviously that was the name that you've read out, has raised is 35 to 37 hours. Now, in 2018, the Four Pillars Agreement made it clear that all new full-time employees would be recruited on a 35-hour contract. And obviously, we've got people that joined before the 1st of April 2018. They were on 39 hours, and we had a 2-hour reduction in the working week. So we're now on 37 for the core OPG grade. So you've got that differential between the two. And it was agreed that if there was additional hours that they'd work on, because the agreement was clear they couldn't be recruited on 37, they would be done on a variation of contract. So individuals could have done that on overtime, on a variation of contract that would be reviewed every 6 months. So I suggest that if Grumpy hasn't been given that variation of contract, go and speak to his local rep, who should be able to pass it on to his area rep, because that uplift would take place. Now, where it gets a little bit more complicated for all of us, and this is why the talks around harmonisation is important, because on the 1st of December 2022, Royal Mail imposed that all new entrants had lesser pay rates, but it was done on working on a 40-hour working week with no paid meal reliefs. So we've got 3 tiers of employees on 3 different contracts in terms of their hourly rate. So that is one of the key things, Chris, we're going to unlock in the forthcoming sets of national discussions.
Thank you, Tony. One more question. I want to give you a chance to close up. The question is from Gary, who to be fair to him, I did see, I think it was the first question asked tonight, Gary, you've been on my list all night, mate, is around, will there still be an opportunity for job shares, Tony, under the new structure?
Yes, Chris, there will be. So look, whether that job share is in relation to 2 part-timers doing that across the week, that would still be the situation. We have to work that through in terms of the days of the week. And look, this is where this is also very complex in terms of it. So we've got some people that are classed as part-time, maybe doing a 24-hour contract, but actually they work that over 3 days doing full-time hours over 3 lots of 8-hour days. So again, we're alive to that. That'll be picked up. The job share would still stay in place if people have got that arrangement. but we would just need to work that through in terms of what coverage takes place across the working week.
I'm going to slip one more question in, Tony, because I know you're going to like it, because Martin McGinley has congratulated us on Pompey losing to Plymouth Argyle last night, and I know you'll be as happy as I am about that, and Martin's a Pompey fan saying we deserve the win, so a good man, well done Martin. But his question is one I've seen come up a few times actually, is around the role of non-drivers and how we're going to fit them into the new world, if you like, if it's agreed, and how we're going to balance the issues such as fatigue for those individuals.
Yeah, so you're right, Chris. So we're going to have to do that. There's a couple of things in terms of Martin's question. So first of all, thanks for the appreciation on the victory last night. I think it was 314 days since an away win. So no mean feat in itself. But in terms of Martin's point on the non-drivers, so this is a very complex matter. Anyone who joined Royal Mail before 2010, it's in their contracts where they don't have to drive. And obviously they don't have to have a driving license. So we almost have to work through how many people that have a driving license that have chosen not to drive, or those that just don't have a driving license. And it's Martin's point. So we all have to pick through. If someone picks a core walk, if the walks increase, how do we deal with that fatigue aspect? And I already said at the start of the show, Royal Mail have committed today to us that we are going to do a fatigue study with everyone involved in the pilot offices. So heart monitors, and what does that do for them in terms of the activity we would do. So that's that. When it comes to Saturdays, where if Saturdays is just going to be first class and parcels delivered, that will go out in a van. But one of the things that we've said to Royal Mail is we don't want to create a two-tier workforce between drivers and non-drivers on a Saturday. Likewise, we don't want non-drivers to feel like they've got to come in and just do indoor tasks in the office. So again, that's a live debate that we're working through. The other part, though, is where the plan is that the van driver on a Saturday, which is combined EV, whatever we call it, would be covering two routes in the model. Could we add in that they cover a third route, but they do it with a non-driver, so a van assist, and then those two people would cover 3 walks. So it helps manage the situation. So, but it's a very fluid situation. We're trying to work through that. Again, this is the complexity, Chris. If I used Nottingham North, the number of people with non-drivers versus Perth, I think Perth had 2 non-drivers in it. So you've almost got some units that are going to have quite a lot of non-drivers in it, and you're going to have others where everyone can drive and everyone does drive. So we're almost going to have to think that through, and that's why there isn't one solution that fits all.
Thank you, Tony. Really do appreciate it. And to the members, you were saying we need a longer session. We've got podcast up, we've got multiple live shows with Tony. He's on again in 2 weeks' time, so we can really reassure you that there'll be no question that goes unanswered. And if you do have a question, drop it to us via email at info@cwu.org, and we'll make sure we get you to the right place. Tony, you've been a long day for you. You've been out and about. You've been really busy meeting members again. Really do appreciate you coming on. Going to give you the chance to make any final points you want to make to the members this evening.
Yeah, just thanks, Chris. Thanks for the engagement from the members. We know this is a really important issue, and people, whether you're in the pilot offices or in a non-pilot office, everyone wants to understand what this means for them in terms of change. So, as I said earlier on in the show, and just to repeat, we are going to look at a weekly communication or a bi-weekly communication that can go out to our members. It will be factual. It will be getting people to report what's happened in Newton Mearns, what's happened in the other pilot offices as they evolve. We will do the positives in those trials, and we will also point out the negatives, because, listen, there's no hiding place here. We're not trying to sugarcoat this. We're going to literally deal with the facts and report that around it. And as I said, we've got the session again in 2 weeks' time, Chris, and hopefully there'll be some further learning, and a couple more offices will have gone live at that point as well, which we can feedback on as well.
Thank you, Tony. So thank you to Tony, to Luke, and to Colin. We really appreciate you, all of you, coming on and facing up and engaging with our members. More important than all 3 of those, even though, is to thank all of you who have tuned in. We really do appreciate it. And the numbers grew as the session went on, which is always an impressive thing, because it shows that, how engaged members are with this issue. The USO change and all the issues going on with Royal Mail are so important, and the union is dealing with them. We're seeing local reps, area reps, branch secretaries, divisional reps, executive members, right up to officers like Tony and Martin and Dave doing a brilliant job in getting out there and turning this round. We need to stick together to get that done. So listen, we're going to have much more sessions like this. We've got podcasts, as I said earlier. We've got briefings. We've got live sessions. Tony's on again in 2 weeks. One final thing we want to say to you, though, is at the minute, you can find it on our social media channels. There is a delivery members survey out there. If you have filled it in, thank you. If you haven't, please fill it in, because Tony is trying to get out there and engage members like we've never had before in that area. So please fill in the delivery survey, because when we go live in a couple of weeks and we give you the results of that, we want the biggest data set possible. But for now, thank you to everyone for joining us. Next week, we've got a great live show with the CWU Humanitarian Aid, who do a brilliant job raising and doing charity work across the UK and across the world, in fact. So that's going to be a really brilliant session. I'm looking forward to hosting that one next week. But for now, take it easy, everyone, and remember, stick together. And if you've got a local rep, get behind them. If you haven't got a local rep, that could be you. Good night, everybody.